still have a trace of caffeine in, and you've got to inquire about the chemical process they've gone through, because actually that might be just as harmful to your body as taking in the caffeine. Okay,
Right.
so as a rule of thumb, if you have all your caffeine by 12 noon, caffeine has a half-life of about 6 hours. And my O-level chemistry tells me that that means, because that's when I learned about half-life, that if I take 10 grams of caffeine in at noon, 5 grams will still be in my system at 6 p.m, 2.5 grams will be in my system at midnight, 1.25 grams at 6, etc. Okay?
Yeah.
So there's that gradual degradation of caffeine. Caffeine interferes with the production of a chemical called adenosine.
Yes.
And adenosine is like a chemical that's helping to increase the sleep pressure and is produced throughout the day. It runs in parallel with the body clock. You've got two systems that are regulating your sleep. Now, basically, your best way of not interfering with that is to have your caffeine early, so you give it time to be burnt off. The bad news is, the older you get, and yes, I'm getting older, like most of us are, the worse the system is for burning off your caffeine. So, when I was 20, I could have a coffee at 10 p.m. and then write an essay. I can't do that now. Okay? So that's caffeine. I'm not anti-caffeine in any way. I gave it up for 7 years. During my peak sleep problem, it was clearly causing me issues. I gave it up for 7 years. I now drink coffee again, but I manage it. Alcohol. Well, I'm saying have your alcohol early. That will be in the second edition, because I've very much learned that. So what do I mean by early? I mean preferably 4 hours before you go to bed.
Okay.
Otherwise, particularly as you get older, what happens is alcohol knocks you out. It's a sedative, but it doesn't keep you asleep. And the sleep you get is sometimes lighter than a normal deep sleep. Now, I'm not saying, have Shiraz on your shreddies or, Chablis on your cornflakes, right? Not that early. But I am saying, think about having a glass of wine at 5, 6, 7 p.m. rather than with a nightcap, because you will find you should sleep better as a result.
Okay. Can I switch a bit and ask you to talk about social jet lag? I hadn't heard the phrase before. I don't know whether other people in the audience are familiar with it.
Yeah, social jet lag means the phenomena of basically partying very late at the weekends and then wondering why on a Monday morning you feel like manure, basically. And that is what I did in my 20s and 30s, and many younger people especially do. I'm sure there are older people who do it as well. The issue is, as I said earlier, having a regular bedtime and wake-up time, approximately, is massively beneficial to getting into a good sleep cycle. So by staying out later because you're choosing to,
Yes.
for social reasons typically, sometimes it's work-related, but more often than not for many people it's a social reason, you're effectively creating a jet lag, a bit like a jet lag of travelling between time zones. So you're choosing to do that. That will take a few days to recover from. So your Monday and Tuesday cognitive performance probably won't be as good as it would have been if you've slept in a regular pattern of, say, with me going to bed by 10 and waking up about 5:30 is my sort of optimum.
And Giles, you talk about this, now that we're talking about this, you talk about catch-up sleep. You say you really can't catch up on your sleep.
You can catch up within a 24-hour period. So if you've had a really bad night's sleep, going and having a good nap during the next day, whether it be in the morning or the early afternoon, you can almost certainly repair any damage.
Okay.
But the issue about catch-up sleep, there is damage that's being done and an increased possibility of some of the other illnesses, heart attacks and strokes, and cancer and so forth. Unfortunately, I mean, when I did the research for the book, I found 2 lists of things that may, if you like, medical conditions that you may suffer from if you have sleep issues. And the European categorization from the European Medical, the EMEA, was 75 different things. Now, to a non-medical doctor, that looked about just about everything was on that list that I could think of, right? So I looked at the American list, 85 things on the American list. Now, I think that's because they categorize things slightly differently between the two associations, the two medical organizations. But there is a lot of long-term damage, and probably the number one that upset me when I learnt about it, was one of my triggers for seeking help and reading the book and starting to sort myself out,
yes,
was the link, the emerging link, which is pretty much confirmed now, between poor sleep and Alzheimer's.
That's scary, yeah.
I don't know about you, but I don't want to get Alzheimer's. And that was the big aha moment for me. When I saw that, I thought, I need to do something.
Okay. Giles, I think we have like about 15-20 minutes left. Do you mind if we just ask
Sure, yeah.
the audience whether they have questions? Oh, we already have a couple of hands up. We have a few more points, but we'll take the questions now. And then we can go back to... can we have some mics, please? Okay, so till we get the mics sorted,
Yeah.
very quickly, can you talk about the 3 pillars, of health,
Yeah.
and then you said...
Of course, yeah. Well, I think actually, people used, probably 5 years ago, people talked about the 3 pillars of health. Increasingly in the UK, people are now talking about the 4 pillars of health. Diet, exercise, sleep, and mental health.
Yeah.
And I actually, when I draw that, I draw sleep at the base, and diet, exercise, and mental health as the 3 pillars on top. Because my experience is, if you're not sleeping right, it doesn't matter how much you care about what you put in your body, or how much you go to Ashok at 6 a.m. and do an hour's workout,
Yes.
you're not going to be in a good place. You might as well, you're better off going and having an extra hour's sleep than trying to exercise at 6 a.m. So
Absolutely.
that's, and I think the emerging focus on mental health, certainly in the UK, in the last sort of since about 2018, when people at the royal family started talking about it, which gave more permission to those things, has been excellent. And then when people look at that and reflect on that, they often go back to, well, how well have you slept?
Yeah.
And if you slept better, you are likely to be able to cope with life better and enjoy life more, which will in turn support your mental health.
Absolutely. I mean, I can vouch for that from personal
Yeah.
experience. Yeah. Do you have your mic?
Who's got the mic?
Hi. Dealing with the same issues that you discuss, could you expand on the circadian rhythm for men over 50 and why the 3 a.m. wake up is such a persistent feature in a lot of my friends over 50? Why is it 3 a.m.? And is there something in the cortisol level that suddenly rises at 3 a.m. or is there something in the circadian rhythm for men over 50 or testosterone or something like that? I don't really understand why the 3 a.m. is a persistent number that keeps showing up.
In my experience, 3 a.m. is normally three sleep cycles after I've gone to sleep. The sleep cycle is 1.5 hours, so I normally go to sleep by about 10:30, and that's why I think it's. If you look at a sleep graph, that has a special name. I forget it now, but a sleep graph. You will often see that's one point where you've ended the 3rd rhythm or the 2nd rhythm if you've got to sleep at midnight, and that's a point where you were quite likely to wake up. In ancient Chinese medicine, there's also quite a lot of discussion around this, pointing as to why that within your 24-hour clock is when you when you catastrophize the most, and you're most likely to start thinking about problems. I would just say, I think the need to wake up for both men and women increases in your sort of late 40s, early 50s. It may be to do with menopause, it may be due to weak bladder and so forth. There are just reasons why, certainly in the last 10 years, I've always woken in the night. I hardly think I've slept through once, probably. And so I think maybe it's just people of our age are a bit more comfortable in talking about it. I actually don't think, particularly medically, it's much more acute. It's a physical thing in terms of the bladder, frankly, but I don't think in terms of the cortisol levels that's a particular thing. Although I do think burning through your caffeine becomes more difficult. So that's part of the reason why, as you get older, you do have these wake-ups. I also think possibly we are more reflective as we get older. So we have more things to think about. So quieting the mind actually becomes more difficult. So I think it's some of those things coming into play rather than some of the chemical things that are going on, personally. However, as I always said at the beginning of these, I'm a lived experience speaker. I'm not an MD or as an MD medical doctor. So that's my take on it from what I've read. So there's hope. What I'm saying is, for you and all your friends, there's hope. If you can consistently adapt behaviours and also use things like the mindfulness technique, you can actually address it.
Okay, shall we take one more question
Please, yeah.
before we go back? Yeah. No, I think that gentleman in that...
Please,
yeah.
I was going to ask about real jet lag, not social jet lag, which affects me more the older I get. Any tips specifically, and what do you think of melatonin? And secondly, if you've got time, I've got a Fitbit which allegedly measures my sleep.
Right.
And it's quite depressing when I think I've had a good night's sleep, and I check the next day and I've got a sleep score of like 69 or 71. Shall I just throw it away?
Let me take the second one first. I'd possibly not use it for a few days, might be one approach. There's real value in the data, I think, and I used a Fitbit when I first wanted to address my sleep issue a decade ago. However, it's about how you use the data. If you read it and say, that's really interesting, maybe it reinforces what I thought about the night and what I thought about the previous night and so forth, that's great. If you let it depress you and worry you and upset you, then I think put it in the drawer for several weeks. Okay? Because how's that serving you? Okay? Where I actually think the Fitbit is very helpful is you are contributing to Fitbit's aggregate gathering of data about sleep. And Fitbit, Whoop, Oura Rings, all these electronic devices that people are using now are gathering huge swathes, hundreds of thousands of data points about sleep. And some of the stuff they're coming up with is starting to contradict some of the University of Oxford academic research around whether we're owls and larks and all that sort of stuff. So, so actually it's a positive contribution to society, wearing one, but in terms of serving you, it rather depends how you react to it. Your first question was about jet lag. If you don't do anything about it, supposedly it takes a day per hour of time change for your body to adjust. So I flew here from London, supposedly I'm still adjusting. And I am feeling a little bit like I'm still adjusting because I arrived on Thursday. So in theory, it won't be till, say, Tuesday that I recover fully. The best ways to alleviate that, one is try and get on local time as quickly as you can, if you can sleep.
And he asked about melatonin also.
Meals and so forth, when you having a shower on arrival, things to help you, to help you. And there are special glasses with lights that people can wear that start to help you interact with the light in a different way, which maybe speed up your acclimatization. Won't solve it, but it can speed it up, and some people find them very useful. When it comes to melatonin, I believe melatonin can be useful. However, it's a traffic light, if you like, that helps you go to sleep. When the melatonin kicks in, it's like the amber green light, if you like, telling you to sleep.
And you have to take it at a particular time, right?
And so you should take it in a prescribed way. So the best way to take melatonin is not just to go to a chemist and buy it.
Right.
It's actually to get it prescribed by the doctor and then continue with that brand and that pill or whatever.
Right,
Same
okay.
one. Because there's no...
Different brands
there's no
no
standard. Some
right.
may be only... That pill might be only half melatonin, half something else.
Okay.
So people do find it useful. But I certainly am not qualified to advise you when to take it. Whereas with magnesium, there's only upside to taking magnesium. And
Yes.
you can't become hooked on it. So I'm a disciple
of magnesium.
and an advocate for it. Thank you.
Okay, all right. I know, but I'm just going to ask him. Giles is a very interesting concept he talks about in his book. He talks about bookending your night's sleep. Giles, I want you to talk about that too, because that was very useful.
Yes. I think what a lot of people, when they start to address their sleep issues, they start to get focused on winding down. With me it's chamomile tea, turning off the devices an hour before your bed, reading, generally lower light, etc. What people sometimes fail to address is the need to also have a wind-up routine in the morning. And that's what I call bookending your night. So bookending your night with some quiet time before bed.
And wind up.
But also, what do I mean by winding up in the morning? I mean, well, what I don't mean is go straight on the computer in your pajamas and start your emails.
But even just doing regular little chores, like your dishes or making a cup of tea.
All those kind of take the dog out, do a bit of yoga, do a bit of meditation, whatever it is to start the day.
Okay.
It's a very good way, because when you wake up,
Yeah.
even if you wake up naturally after 7 to 8 hours, and you've had a good 5 hours sleep cycle, good 5 sleep cycles, about an hour and a half, and you're fully fully awake. Apparently, our brain it's a bit like a coffee percolator. Thing is still sort of 15, 20, 30 minutes, it's still warming up. And I think that's why also, if you take a shower first thing, you get ideas in the shower, because you're still in that REM sleep state, you're still starting to solve problems and come up with options and so forth. It's creative. So it serves you. So there really is a link between how you spend your first hour of the day and how you will sleep at night. And it's also obviously linked to how good your day is going to be. If you've overslept, you jump out of bed, you're behind the game the whole day, you get more stressed. Hey, you didn't have such a good day, and it's more difficult to wind down at the end of the day, etc. So that's why things like the sunrise alarm clock are so wonderful for people.
What is a sunrise alarm clock?
There's a brand, other brands I'm sure are available. However, the one I know is called Lume. I think it's a French brand, where instead of a noise happening when you want to wake up, you have that sensation of very, very low, slow sunrise in the room. In other words, the light goes on very, very slowly over about a half-hour period.
Okay. Never seen one.
No, they are out there. They're not the cheapest alarm clocks, but they are very effective. I personally try to wake up naturally, but and can mostly do that. Probably oversleep twice a year.
Okay.
But if you need an alarm clock, they're worth looking at, or any other brand, because it's helping you wake up more naturally. And because, I mean, the buzz at 5:45 is...
It's depressing, really.
Can't be a great way to start the day, is it?
No. Okay, we'll take this gentleman's question.
Sir.
Dr. Walpida, physician leader, New York Presbyterian.
I'm only slightly intimidated by the fact the first word you said was doctor.
Thank you for this delightful talk on sleep hygiene. My question is simple. Has anybody done any research on REM, non-REM, on the positive action of bana, on improving sleep?
Sorry, the positive action of?
Bana.
What is that? I'm sorry, you have to elaborate.
Like a Buddhist sermon, in other words.
Bana,
Chanting of some sort.
which is
that what
a
you said?
Dhamma talk or Buddhist chanting. Bana, okay, like a sermon.
Right. So, are you thinking about that as when would that occur during the day? Are you thinking to help with sleep?
In the villages, they do it in the night.
Yeah, before
Right.
you go to
Villagers have got little sleep problems when compared to countries like the United Kingdom.
Right.
States.
So it's as part of your wind down process. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. I think that's something like that is fantastic. Why is it fantastic? Because anything that is comforting and helps you focus on something in a ritualistic way will help to quieten the mind away from your problems and your day-to-day issues is fantastic. So the rather secular, rather sad Western version of that would probably be counting sleep or something like that. Sheep. Sorry, counting sheep. Or even someone in a workshop I did recently with a business school talked about retracing a walk that he does
Okay.
in his head. So, and that a walk that he's very familiar with, and he actually thinks the whole way through that walk. Similar principle. What can you do that's familiar, that helps you focus on that rather than your troubles, is comforting, so forth. So that's it's the same principle. But I've not heard it called that. That's why. Thank you very much.
If I can comment on that, actually when I went through a very difficult time, I used to listen to Ajahn Brahm's sermons, that they helped me sleep. So I used to refer to him as my Brahm's lullaby, because it really did calm me down and give me something else to focus on. So Bana does help. Giles, do you want, we've got a little less than 5 minutes. Do you want to sort of leave people with any lasting thoughts? Giles will also be at the back signing books. Please pick up a copy, and he'll also, if you have any other questions and you want to do a little mini session with him, he's happy to do that.
Happy to do so, yeah. I think my 3 main focus areas would be, firstly, which we haven't actually mentioned, but I'll bring it in, the concept of one sleep, something that's called a mono sleep, I think, is a post-industrial concept, right? So before the industrial age, 200 plus years ago, certainly in Shakespeare's time, and this has been well researched, I think someone's written an entire book on the subject and gone through earlier literature on this.
Okay.
Typically people had a first sleep and a second sleep. So they would naturally wake in the middle of the night, get up and do something, light a candle maybe. In Shakespeare's case, I understand he did a lot of his writing in the middle of the night.
Right.
And then go back to sleep. And when I learned that really helped me get back to sleep. Because I thought, this is natural.
Yeah.
Maybe we're not designed to sleep 7 or 8 hours in a row. And actually that really helped me. So I think that's one message I want to get to people. It's quite normal to wake in the night.
Oh, okay.
Key is how you then respond to it through mindfulness, through maybe getting up and reading a book that you like, something, getting back to the comfort thing, maybe chanting, whatever you find comforting at that moment is great and stops your mind racing too much. So that would be my first message that we haven't really covered. The second would be the regular sleep time. It massively helps you. That's why shift work, I get asked to go to companies and talk about shift work and sleep.
Yes.
And I have a spiel on it. The government in the UK has produced quite a lot of advice around it, posters, all sorts of messages around it. Unfortunately, the reality is, and I always say this to the company before I start, you can't get away from the fact it's just not very good for your sleep, right? So for those of you that are shift workers, particularly in the medical profession, etc. If you can do it for only short periods, it will be better for you. A regular bedtime and waking up time and finding out what that one is for you, which often you find out on holiday. If you throw away the alarm clock, you'll find out what your regular time is. If you can keep to that, that'd be great. And the third thing, I think I would emphasise that's made a huge difference to many people I know is magnesium.
Yes.
So that's been a massive win for me.
Okay. I think it's time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for being here and for participating. Thank you, Giles. It's been a pleasure.